North Korean and soon potentially Iranian ballistic missiles are being used in Ukraine. But why is this happening and who really stands to benefit? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's get right into it. So the big news story is, of course, first about an hour ago, it was disclosed that Russia has actually begun firing ballistic missiles into Ukraine, provided by North Korea. And that's according to two U.S. officials who were speaking under conditions of anonymity. But then it was confirmed just a few minutes ago by White House spokesman John Kirby, who confirmed, of course, that Russia launched a North Korean-made missile into Ukraine. Now, it didn't damage anything. It hit an empty field in Zaporizhzhia, but note that it was launched from within Russia, 460 kilometers away. And this was done supposedly, according to the U.S., there were two launches. They happened December 30th and January 2nd, and they know for a fact that one impacted in and around the Zaporizhzhia front line. Just triangulate where that is exactly. Let's see if we can find it on the map here. So it's going to be right around, I believe, one of these points here. Here's actually Zaporizhzhia itself. You can see there's a pretty high level of drone activity. But it's probably just reported as shelling. It's honestly tough to say exactly. It could also be here, since, of course, there's reports of some level of explosion. But again, the U.S. is saying that this didn't damage any significant targets. Instead, it damaged primarily, it just landed in an empty field. So what exactly does this mean? Why is this happening? Of course, this is sort of strange because, as you guys probably know, Russia can get its own ballistic missiles, and that it has obtained some, as we just saw, from North Korea, and is trying to obtain more from Iran. This is, of course, Moscow needs it because it needs to replenish its supplies for the war with Ukraine, right? You know that very recently, Russia launched probably some of its largest airstrikes against civilian infrastructure targets in Ukraine, likely in response to the Ukrainian sinking of a Russian landing ship. But Russia struggled to produce the high-tech weapon systems, right, like a cruise missile or like a ballistic missile, that sanctions really are doing an effective job of restricting the sensitive technology needed to make these missiles work. So it has had to reach far and wide to try to replenish its stocks, right? And it's pretty well established at this point that many of its individual soldier equipment, like plate carriers, are being sourced from North Korea. Artillery shells, very prominently sourced from North Korea. The ballistic plates from Chinese civilian manufacturers. But the thing that's sort of puzzling is that Russia's ability to do technical ballistic missile work is light years ahead of North Korea's. North Korea has a rudimentary program, as does Iran, though Iran's seems to be a bit more professionalized. The question is then, why, if Russia already has the know-how and it just needs the core components, is it buying wholesale North Korean ballistic missiles? Well, this is what I thought was... This is where it gets into my speculation. The thesis I have here is that, of course, Russia was absolutely desperate for artillery shells about 3 to 6 months ago, and negotiated a deal to basically buy every artillery shell the North Koreans had. Now, by most accounts, right, North Korean shells are not up to the typical standards of a even Russian manufacturer, but that's okay, right? They are good enough to be used on the front lines, and they are. I believe that part of this deal, one of the things that North Korea struggles with is to test its ballistic missiles. Every time it does so, it is literally an international incident. And North Korea generally just shoots its ballistic missiles into the sea. So obtaining data, right, is seen as such a belligerent act that North Korea really cannot perform much field testing of its ballistic missile technology. And because of the onerous sanctions against it, it can't get a lot of ballistic missile experts to help it interpret some of that data. So my theory is that North Korea actually went to the Russians and said, listen, if you want North Korean artillery shells, you have to also field test our ballistic missiles. Because again, let's see if we can pull up this map real quick. Look at the map. This was launched from deep inside Russia, 460 kilometers away. Why would you have this level of standoff, right? It's easily 4 or 5 times what the max range of a HIMARS is. So, and the HIMARS is the longest range missile system that Ukraine fields. So why would you have this tremendous standoff when it would presumably be much more accurate to launch the missile closer to the front line, right? There's literally less chance of variability or errors, right? You're off by 1 degree or a fraction of a degree over 460 kilometers. It's going to produce a big problem. The only reason you would stand off this far as I know, again, if there's a ballistic missile expert, let me know in the comments, is if you wanted to test your ability to hit targets accurately at range, right? If you're gathering testing data about the max effective range of this technology. And 460 kilometers is actually just long enough to do it, right? And what's interesting is the entire Korean peninsula is about 1,200 kilometers. So even if the North Koreans were to launch literally from the absolute apex furthest point of their country all the way to the furthest point, it's looking at maybe 600 meters or 600 kilometers. So not exactly. So literally North Korea can't test its missiles beyond a certain length because it would involve flying them into international waters, triggering an international incident. And so what I believe has happened is that North Korea said, listen, we're sending you our missiles. You have to use them. You have to field test them. We want to know, what do they destroy? Do the warheads detonate as intended? Is this as accurate as our scientists think it is when it comes to hitting targets, right? Because remember, you launch in international waters, what North Korea can't do is do a battle damage assessment. In fact, in some ways, it's really hard to even know if your target actually hit the point where you want. Whereas if you shoot it into a field in Zaporizhzhia, then you can have a drone fly over, you can have Russian troops on the ground, observe the impact point, and make an assessment, make an intelligent assessment of how accurate and effective that missile and its warhead was. So it's a tremendous opportunity for North Korea to advance its ballistic missile technology while Russia gets to replenish its arsenal of longer range weapon systems. Now, I think they are doing this for North Korea. I really think they may be making the same offer to Iran, whose ballistic missile program is much more advanced. They may say, give us some ballistic missiles, send your technical experts here with us, launch them, and we will have our troops do the battle damage assessment. We'll assess its accuracy, right? You're going to get to field test a program that you have been working on for decades. And this is dangerous not just to Ukrainians, right, who are at this point used to dealing with these sort of missiles. But remember, ballistic missile defense, far more difficult than regular anti-air defense. A cruise missile, fairly capable of being shot down by manpads. But a ballistic missile, just because of the fact that it goes up and then it drops down at a really high speed, it's very hard to counter a ballistic missile, right? So for Russia, being able to field more ballistic missiles is better. For North Korea, the data is great. Iran, the data is great. And even being able to refine and move its missiles to the next generation of effectiveness for both Iran and North Korea is going to make them more dangerous. Even if they don't want to use them, it will become public knowledge that their ballistic missile program is advancing, that it can achieve superior ranges, superior accuracy, and even if you didn't make any changes, just proving on the battlefield that your ballistic missiles are as dangerous as you say they are is itself a huge game changer for your ability to threaten your neighbors, to coerce them, and to cause problems for them. Guys, if you have New Year's resolutions as I do, you need a secret weapon to make them happen. That's why I wanted to talk about Strike Gum. Strike Gum is, of course, my company, right? It is the zero sugar energy drink alternative. Each one of these individual pieces, 90 milligrams of caffeine, that's as much as a Red Bull or an Amp Energy, 100 milligrams of alpha, but best of all, zero sugar, so it definitely won't screw up your diet, right? And no sugar crash, right? And when I would drink energy drinks, I got a sugar crash all the time, and I hated it. That was literally the inspo for the gum. Plus, we have a sale going on literally until the 5th. So tomorrow, it's free shipping on all orders over $70 and $100 internationally. So check it out, strikegum.com. That's really all I had. Thanks so much. Hit like and subscribe. See ya.